Philip, come over here. Please go get a doc. Lie still, and we'll go get a doctor. Jerry said, are you alright? And shot. And the girl stopped. Jerry said, alright, we'll go get one. Hurry. Deborah Nelson, age 19, along with Roger Gray, age 17, and Jerry Weathers, age 17, were driving around when they came across Michael Mageau shot at Blue Rock Sorings Park, and so they went to call for a doctor. Deborah lived way on the other side of town, and Roger was over there also, so they decided to go to Jerry Weathers' house to call for help. Earlier that night, at approximately 8 p.m., Darlene Farron called Michael Mageau to tell him that she couldn't come over right then, that she had to take her sister, Christine, to the Miss Firecracker contest, and that she would call Michael when it was over and let him know when she would be over there. Darlene had arranged for a babysitter to watch her daughter because Darlene was going to go with Michael Mageau to San Francisco to watch a movie. But then she found out about Christine and the need to take her to the 4th of July celebration activities. Darlene stopped at Caesar's Pizzeria, her husband's place of employment, Dean Art Farron, and he told her that they were going to have a party after they closed up at their house, sometime around 12 or 1 at night. Then Darlene took Christine to the 4th of July celebration downtown and the Miss Firecracker contest. After it was over, Darlene and Chris went by Caesar's again, and they talked more about the party they were going to have at their house. And then Darlene drove to Terry's restaurant and talked to one of her friends there. Then she drove Christine home. And finally, Darlene arrived home sometime between 11 and 11:30, and she planned to take the babysitters home. But Bill Lee, Dean's boss, called Darlene and asked if she could go out and get fireworks. So she asked the babysitters to stay longer to watch her daughter. And then she left to go to Michael Mageau's house. Vallejo officer Richard Hoffman was patrolling the Blue Rock Sorings Park at about 11:40 p.m. that night. And then he drove away. At around the same time, Darlene parked in front of Michael's house at 11:40, and Michael jumped in the car and they left. Darlene and Michael arrived at Blue Rock Sorings Park at about 11:45 p.m. The Zodiac killer pulled up behind Darlene and Michael. Michael said the Zodiac left and came back 5 minutes later and parked behind them. Then the Zodiac killer, with his gun and flashlight, walked up to the passenger side of the car and he shot Darlene and Michael multiple times. Now the caretaker of the park lived in a house at the park, and his son, George Bryant, age 22, heard some teenagers lighting off firecrackers in the parking lot. But then after that, he heard gunfire, and then he heard someone tear off. Deborah, Roger, and Jerry were at Jerry's parents' house, and they weren't sure if the operator took them serious about reporting the crime at Blue Rock Springs. So they drove over to Deborah's brother-in-law's house, and his name was Robert Rogers. And he called the police, and the police were already at the park. Now, Deborah's stepfather was a highway patrolman, but she didn't tell him about what happened that night. Darlene and Michael were taken to the hospital, I believe in separate ambulances. Darlene was pronounced dead on arrival. Michael was operated on, and he might have been moved to Queen of Our Valley in Napa. Andrew Nicolatos and his girlfriend were driving slowly away from Blue Rock Springs, and the police stopped them and detained them, and ultimately read them his rights. Dispatch Officer Nancy Slover received many calls that night. The first from George Bryant reporting the gunfire, and she dispatched that news to the police officers. Then she received the call from Deborah about Michael being shot out at the park. And then at 12:40, some strange call came in.
I want to report a double murder. If you go 1 mile east on Columbus Parkway to the public park, you will find the kids in a brown car. They were shot with a 9mm Luger. I also killed those kids last year. Goodbye.
Gunman kills girl. Escort shot, left to die. A young woman was shot to death and her companion was critically wounded today, moments after they parked a car at Blue Rock Sorings Park. Police said a gunman opened a front door of the car and fired several shots with a semi-automatic pistol. Killed was Darlene E. Farron, 22, of Vallejo. Michael Mageau, 19, was reported in critical condition at Kaiser Hospital with bullet wounds in the head, stomach, and leg. Police said 3 young people driving into the park near the Vallejo Municipal Golf Course spotted Mageau lying alongside the car. They called police. Mageau told only bare details of the attack. Mageau said the gunman opened the door and started firing without warning. Mrs. Farron, a waitress, was shot in the head and died before reaching the hospital. Mageau is the son of Robert Mageau, operator of a Vallejo pest control business. Officer Richard Hoffman, age 30, and his partner, Roy Conway, age 27, were the first to arrive at the crime scene. A few moments later, Officer John Lynch, age 51, and Officer Ed Rust arrived at the crime scene. Darlene Suennen Farron, age 22. Darlene Elizabeth Farron was taken to Kaiser Hospital, declared dead on arrival. Cause of death, multiple bullet wounds to the chest and abdominal organs. Victim shot by unknown assailant. At Hogan High School, Darlene was involved in this play, and you can see all the members here of that play. Darlene graduated from Hogan High School in June of 1965. Dean Art Farron graduated from Vallejo High School in June of 1962. Dean Farron and Darlene got married on August 3rd, 1967, and Dean worked at Caesar's Italian restaurant on Tennessee Avenue. This was Darlene's second marriage. Darlene's first husband was James Phillips, age 25, and they married on January 1st, 1966. He had become acquainted with Darlene Suennen while living in San Francisco in the Haight-Ashbury district. Could not recall exact date, but it was shortly after his being discharged from the Army in August of 1965. They started living together and were married in Reno in January of 66. Marriage did not go well, as he stated his wife was inclined to run around with other men. Couple lived a rather gypsy existence, and he stated he was not concerned when Darlene decided to terminate their marriage. Here's a look at their application for a marriage license, and I believe that James filled out at least the top portion, so you could compare that with the Zodiac's writings. And here's some information about James that I wrote up, and so you can pause it and look at that. Leo Suennen, age 43, Darlene's father, and he was in the Navy from June 16th, 1944 until June 3rd, 1946. And then Norma Jean Farron, age 39, Darlene's mother, and she was a stay-at-home mom. Michael Mageau, age 19. He graduated from Hogan High School in June 1967, and he had a twin, David. And here's a newspaper article from 1966 about Michael being involved in a construction class at his high school. Robert Mageau, age 43, Michael's father, and he was in the military. And here's his registration card, all typed up. And he lived in the Los Angeles area, Torrance, that Don Chaney worked at when he reported Arthur Lee Allen as possibly being the Zodiac killer. Robert worked for Oro Wheat Baking Company, based in San Francisco. Carmen Mageau, age 43, Michael's mother. She worked for this business pest control company as a secretary that they had when they lived in Vallejo, California. Subject appeared to be short, possibly 5'8", was real heavy set, beefy build. State subject was not blubbery fat, but real beefy, possibly 195 to 200 pounds, maybe even larger. Michael stated that the subject did not have a mustache, nor was he wearing glasses or anything, and that he was between the ages of 26 and 30 years old. This ends part 1 of this episode, and continuing on in part 2, we'll look at some of the suspects, Arthur Lee Allen, George William Waters, and some other details. Well, this ends this episode of Unsolved, and next weekend we'll pick up with part 2 on the Blue Rock Sorings crime scene and look at some of the suspects and some other details. So I'll see you then.